What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and we're back for the final podcast of Podcast Week. And we are joined today by 2010 World Series of Poker Player of the Year, Frank Kassela. Welcome to the pod, man.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on here. This is it's been a fun month just leading up to King of the Hill and doing all these different things, talking about it, having a great time, and enjoy joining you and just doing these kind of things.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited for the match. I do have to say that I am especially excited that I drew Phil Hellmuth in round one. Go ahead.
Well, I can understand why. I mean, any of the three of you guys, I can go online and go to YouTube, watch hundreds of different hands of heads up play. For you guys trying to figure out what I might possibly be doing has got to be a complete mystery.
Yeah, let's jump into that. Let's jump in and talk about the King of the Hill thing, kind of like preparation. So what kind of experience do you have playing heads up no limit? Are you going to be doing any studying or preparing for your match with Dan Cates? Where are you at coming into this?
Well, I mean, as far as overall experience playing no limit heads up, I mean, as far as like live hand action, I've got less than 1,000 hands in, I would say. And when I played it almost not at all on the internet. So I'm not a no limit hold'em player generally. I will be doing some study, and I don't know if I'm necessarily going to talk to you guys a whole lot about that because I want to try to keep a little bit secret. But yeah, I am going to be doing some things to improve and change up my no limit game. But other than Phil, I mean, Phil and I do have a lot of playtime together, but I think I met Dan on a airplane once. We were flying up to Bay 101, and you and I went and hung out at a nightclub once. So other than that,
that's funny because I never got to meet you before, and then this summer, like I almost never go to nightclubs. I don't know if you're hitting the clubs a lot either. I assume you're not going out too much. And then we both were at that club with Sean Deeb. And I think I forgot who we were seeing, the Chainsmokers or something. And it was just too funny. We're like the front table at Excess, everyone's dressed up nice, Chainsmokers, and Deeb was wearing his Nerf shirt. It was just like amazing.
Yeah, pretty much a standard Sean Deeb move for sure. And, I felt like, I mean, you got to give credit to Wynn for having an amazing nightclub anyway, but Excess truly won when they started shooting those money cannons out over the crowd. I mean, $1 bills just floating down everywhere. What's funny is I ended up staying later than almost anybody in our group. And even as I was leaving, the club was probably 80% empty. There's still just dollar bills all over the floor. And I'm like, this is insane first world problem type stuff.
I actually have a pretty, I don't know if you want to call it an embarrassing story or not, but I think some people might enjoy this one. So the day that I won the one drop, we like hit the strip club until like, way too early in the morning celebrating. And I was like standing next to someone and they just had like all these ones and then they just threw them in the air and then they landed and there was like this huge pile of ones next to me and like no one was picking them up. And I was like,
right? I mean, those are the kind of things that only happen in Las Vegas. For people who've never been here before, you got to get to Vegas and check it out. It's definitely worth the trip.
It's definitely good fun. If you've not been to Vegas, you got to go there at least one time, or go here, I should say. We both live in Las Vegas. You got to come here at least once or twice and get the experience. Once you are a local, you're kind of over it. Every now and then, if some people are in town, I think it's fine. But what is living in Las Vegas like for you now? Do you enjoy it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I moved to Vegas originally 15 years ago almost. And originally it was only like about half the time. I've got businesses in Memphis and Dallas and Vegas. And when I originally moved out here, I didn't even have a business here yet. I moved here mainly for poker, just running up too much bills in the hotel rooms and stuff when you'd come to town. And the property market in 2002, 2003 was exploding. So it was like, I may as well buy a house if I'm going to be out there that often. And then just over time, I like being here more and more. And when I first moved out here, I'd still go and play pit games and the kind of stuff that you do, just as a local tourist. But you realize really quickly, once you move here, you can't be a normal casino patron. I mean, it's just money-wise, you just run out almost immediately. But playing in the games, like when Aria first opened, I'd go down there a lot. I was, me and JRB basically got the mixed game at the Ivy Room going from the get-go.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know I mean, as far as like my poker play history goes, I wouldn't even know where to start to talk about that as far as live play in Vegas. I guess, I started playing live poker a lot in Tunica in the late 90s. This is when I lived in Memphis primarily. And, just groups of us from Memphis, when we wanted to go out and do something, you'd go down to the casino. It was kind of a natural thing to go do. And, everybody would want to go play blackjack or craps or whatever. I'd just go play poker, usually 7-card stud. Back when I first started playing cash poker in poker rooms, you couldn't even play no limit Texas Hold'em. There was no such game being spread. The only time it was ever played was during poker tournaments, like 4 times a year. But anyway, so I'd play stud. And then once I started to get better and better at like limit Hold'em, I started playing PLO a lot. They opened the Horseshoe, and Jack Keller actually moved there. I started to learn a lot from him playing. We would just play 2-5-10 or 5-10 1/4 PLO. So when I first moved to Vegas, that was the game I liked to play. You couldn't get a PLO game going anywhere in Las Vegas. So I originally started at the Venetian for a few years, like in the 2000 to 2005 range. That never really worked out, but I was still kind of playing PLO regularly at Venetian. And then Aria was open, and I showed up there wanting to play that regularly there. That never really took off. So then we started playing the black chip mix game, usually 200, 400, or up to 400, 800 in the Ivy room. And we kind of got the ball rolling there.
So it sounds like you have a wide experience, or a lot of different experiences in terms of what games you've played and where you've played at and all that kind of stuff. But could you maybe give us a bit about you as a person, kind of your background, where you're from, what got you into poker, maybe a little bit more on that side?
Sure. I started my first business when I was 25 years old in 1993. So I'm an old guy. I'm not as old as Phil Hellmuth, but I'm pretty old. And so I started my first business then. And over the years, I've opened different. I'm kind of like a serial entrepreneur. And I was going through my first divorce in the year 2000. And that's when I started really playing poker a lot and realized I was enjoying it. It's fun. I was good at it. And then I think it was either 2002 or 2003. I had my first tournament score of any size. I won like $25,000 in a PLO event. And I thought, holy cow, this is awesome. And, so I started playing more and more poker, focusing on work a little bit less, even though I still spend about 80 to 90% of my time on work related stuff. I play as much poker as I can, but I've never been able to do a full schedule of it. But anyway, that's where, I started playing then, and then just over time, by 2005, I tried to play essentially a full run of the World Series. And that's the one thing I do every year is I dedicate like those 6 weeks to play the World Series every summer.
So it seems like, with the exception of the World Series and the score that you talked about that kind of got you going or got you into it, it seems like you would associate yourself more as a cash player. Is that true? Or do you see yourself kind of in the middle ground?
I think I'm definitely in the middle ground. I mean, I like to say that I'm one of the best recreational players in the world because I'm not, I just can't play it all year long. I'm not an around the calendar kind of player. But for me, the best thing about the World Series of Poker is showing up at the Rio and, playing you world beaters. You guys are great at the games, and being able to show up there, compete with you guys, sometimes get lucky enough to win a bracelet or go deep and that kind of stuff. And I'm really proud of that. And it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy the challenge of it. It's kind of like the same reason, I'm doing King of the Hill. I mean, it's like when I look at that lineup, it's like, come on, what a dog am I? But it's like, at the same time, it's such a great challenge, and it's nothing but upside for me. If I lose in the first round, everybody's going to go, you were playing Jungleman. Of course you were going to lose. But if I end up winning, everybody's going to be like, holy shit, how did that donk end up winning that thing? So it's just a lot of fun for me.
I do have to say that I really respect you just like getting in there and battling, because this is a high stakes event with extremely good people and Phil Hellmuth. No, I'm kidding. I just kidding. With extremely good people. And yeah, you're getting in there knowing you're the underdog in a format that you're not experienced in. I think that it's really cool to see someone step up to the plate and try and accomplish, try and win that event. And look, here's the thing, even though you are the underdog, at least according to the betting lines, the thing is, it's still anyone's game. I mean, these are going to be escalating blinds. If it runs for more than a couple hours, when we're doing the semifinal matches, we're going to be short. There's going to be a lot of all-ins. So it's not like, even if you are an underdog, it's not like you're like, 30% to win. You're at worst like 40, 42, 45. So yeah, I guess it's still a reasonable spot to get in as far as having a shot for that prestige. And there is a lot of upside on potentially winning the whole match. So you face jungle in round one. Do you have, I know you're trying to keep your game plan a little bit under wraps here as far as like what kinds of strategy you're going to be bringing to the table, but are you doing some work specifically on jungle to try and prepare for your match against him?
Yes, I will be doing things specifically working with people that know his game pretty well, and being able to understand his hand range, understand where he might be in different hands, different positions, different stack size relative to what we're playing bet wise and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to be a lot more prepared than most people would have thought. But like I said, I don't really want to go, too much into detail about that. But I'm not just like randomly showing up rich business guy out of nowhere to sit down and play the game. I am going to actually, study up and make it a match.
That's good. It's a good approach to have. I've actually played jungle. I don't know how many hands, like 10 or 15,000 hands. So I've played a lot, a lot. I've played a lot against jungle, and over that course of time, he destroyed me, and it was really funny because it was around the time that I think I was at the peak of the heads up no limit ladder, and I would try and play him every day, and he would just mainly say no, and all right, Doug, let's go, and then he would just crush me, and then it would be another, however long until we played again. But one thing that I think that jungle does really well, he's how there are certain people that just really know what you're up to, like they have a really good sense of smell for like what you're up to. Jungle he has like an uncanny sense of what someone is up to. And I mean, maybe Phil Hellmuth too. Maybe that's actually Hellmuth especially as well. But yeah, I would just say to be careful with jungle, because if he thinks you're getting out of line, the guy will make some insane call downs.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm going to be spending a lot of time especially like the 7 days or so leading up to it, watching a lot of video of different, hands that he's played and stuff like that. And, I expect to be, pretty well studied, but when you're actually there in the barrel playing the game, I mean, we've done TV stuff. You get in there, you're tunnel visioned, you're really just focused on what's going on. And, more than anything else, we just kind of rely on our instincts, especially when we're playing, this level of play. My variance of games, I mean, just like since the World Series, I think I've played 5-10 no limit at the win. I played a 4-way $9 buy-in hand over at one of my relatives' house. I mean, literally I went and played a $60 buy-in tournament in Tunica with my kid and my brother a couple of weeks ago. And then I was in Choctaw the other day playing the main event there. So, I mean, I literally will play all kinds of stakes for the love of poker more than anything else. So, when you're there, you're focused on the competitive nature of what's going on. You're feeling out your opponent, especially in this particular setup. It's going to be a lot of fun.
So let's talk about playing different stakes. Like how you approach that. Do you find that when you play, and obviously I'm not talking about the $9 home game or whatever, but when you play the smaller stake stuff, like let's say you're going to play a 1K tournament or something like that, or 5-10 or 2-5, and then maybe some other time you're playing 400 800 mix, or you're playing in this high stakes heads up tournament. Do you find that you're able to be just as competitive in the higher stakes as the lower stakes, or do you actually feel that when you play higher, it brings out more focus for you and that you play better?
Well, I'd like to say that I play the same level of competitiveness across the board. I think we would all like to say that. But yeah, when you increase the stake sizes, you always increase your focus, I think. For any of us. I mean, I was watching the podcast you did with Dan earlier today, for example, and he was just talking about, for most of the planet Earth, just head spinning amount of money that's going into some of these pots that he's playing in those games in China. And, I'm sure, I think you made a comment to him about how does somebody lose 100 million US and roll out of bed the next day and eat breakfast? I mean, I don't care who you are on the planet Earth. $100 million is a lot of money, even if you're Bill Gates. So, people will kind of tend to push themselves up to the very upper edge of the limits of what they're comfortable playing. But I guarantee you that person has to be focusing more on playing a solid game at that level than they do if they're just playing like 200, 400 no limit in the Ivy room.
I totally agree with that. And I think that, you know, one thing that we talked about yesterday was when the stakes become that important, you know, do people still play? Do people still play like the game that they want to play? Because at some point, when you're bluffing for some of these amounts of money, or you have to make a call for a ton of money, if it's in a gray area where you're not really sure, you know, players tend to be more conservative. Do you feel like when you've played some of the highest stakes stuff that, you know, you've played the game that you want to play, or do you sometimes feel that pressure that just the amount of money, you know, at stake can kind of influence what you want to do?
Well, I guess for me, I'm lucky in that I can honestly say I've never put myself into a game where I felt like I was uncomfortable at the stake level I was playing. The closest I think I would ever say I've ever done to that is playing like the 2000, 4000 mixed game at Bellagio. You know, I like playing. Huh?
Decent sized game.
yeah, I mean, that's a decent sized game, but like in that particular game, you know, if you have a bad session, you've lost an amount of money that you just get pissed off at yourself about after the fact. And I learned that kind of early on in my ability to play that level of game. So I just don't put myself in a position where I'm going to be even in a game where if I take a downswing, I'm going to get mad at myself after the fact. And I've been really good, I think, over the years as far as game selection and keeping it at stakes that I'm comfortable with and can still enjoy what I'm doing.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good approach to have. So let's talk a bit about your businesses and that side of things. You know, as a recreational player, and most of your times going into your businesses, can you maybe talk about like what those businesses are? You know, maybe some of the ones you're working on now, just a little background of that.
Sure. The very first business I started is still kind of like my primary underlying business. We sell promotional products and specialty items to government offices and private companies nationwide. And we do a lot of stuff like we have our own graphic artists. We design our own product. We sell our own product. In many cases, we manufacture our own products in Memphis. And we do stuff like bullying resistance education products, anti-drug, anti-tobacco. And I mean, it'll be everything from coloring books to regular promotional products to ballpoint pens, pad printed items, screen printed stuff. And anyway, I started that business in 1993. And over the years, actually, it started off originally, we were just selling supply items to post offices across the country. And then it just kind of evolved from there. But that's a whole nother long story on its own. And then what I'm most known for business-wise is my Scrubtastic business. We sell scrubs and we have stores in Memphis, Dallas, and Las Vegas. And that's just the different style fashion items for medical professionals, whether it's nurses, doctors, dental assistants, that kind of stuff. And we do brick and mortar and a lot of group business to hospitals and doctors' offices in those three markets.
Nice. Yeah, I actually know a little bit about scrubs just because my mom is a nurse, so I've heard her talk about them or whatever. But other than that, I have basically no knowledge of that industry.
Where's your mom live?
She lives in the Bay Area. She's from England, but she lives in San Jose, California.
All right. Well, if we get a scrub store open there, when the Scrubtastic gets to San Jose, I'll make sure and get you some gift cards.
Nice. I'll let her know. So what's it like going from doing these businesses and running these businesses and trying to have them, you know, succeed and grow, and then trying to play poker as well on the side? You know, when you said earlier, 80 or 90% of your time goes into your business. Do you feel drained at all? Do you feel like maybe like that takes its toll on either side of what you're doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I think for anybody who is not only in business but has kids, you know, I mean, for any of us, I guess, that have kids, and, you know, these are my kids, I guess, hanging on the wall behind me here. But, you know, I mean, my kids are always my number one priority, and I spend more time interacting and doing things with them than I even do on business or poker. And, you know, then is from a business standpoint, you know, having employees across the country running these different businesses, working for me in some cases for over 20 years, you know, I always have to keep my eye on the ball and making sure that I'm, you know, being sensible, professional, and responsible in running those businesses. And so poker ends up being more than anything else a luxury for me. If I get to play poker and be profitable, that's awesome. But I do understand, for me, more than anything else, poker's entertainment. So I have to make sure that my kids are taken care of, my family responsibilities are being handled, my business responsibilities are being taken care of. Then I get to go out and play poker.
Nice. It's interesting for me because I'm kind of, doing the other direction. I'm starting in poker and now I'm trying my hand at, business. Obviously, I launched a training site last year, and I've just been spending a lot of time trying to grow that. And it always surprises me. You can always work on your business. You could work all day, every day. There would always be stuff to do. There's never like, oh man, I can't think of anything I can do for my business right now. There's just this humongous list. And then the question is just how much time are you going to put in towards doing things?
Yeah, I mean, that's, when it comes to business stuff, I mean, there's a lot. I can't even imagine, trying to do the stuff that you're doing on Upswing Poker. But no matter what the business is, you're never going to look at a product or a service or anything that you're trying to offer, go, okay, that's it, I'm done, I can go ahead and punch out and maybe I'll come back a month from now. I mean, when you're running your own business, it's just constant responsibility and constant pressure. And that's why I think for me personally, turning to poker over the years in a lot of ways allows me to blow off steam and, just, I don't know what it is, the game of poker. I was reading something recently about the AI program, I think that Google has made recently, that can beat the Chinese Go player, like the very best player at Go on the planet Earth. And, I think anybody that understands just the basic element of what Go is, you kind of figure, okay, yeah, somebody's eventually going to design a computer program that can master that. But when you think about No Limit Texas Hold'em, I mean, you're, getting to Heads Up, you guys were talking about bots and some of the sims and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see when, AI gets to the point where it can truly crush, especially when you're dealing with different bet limits and different stack sizes and different stuff like that. Poker's just a really elegant, great game, and it's fun to play.
No, poker is an amazing game. The fact that it's, I mean, I don't want to say super easy to learn, but relatively easy to learn, but yet so unbelievably difficult to master. And there are so many things at play when you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. You bring up bots, and I think that we're kind of at a place already for No Limit Hold'em where bots are beating people. I think we saw earlier this year there was a match between CMU and some Heads Up pros, like a bunch of my buddies that went down and played it, and they just got walloped. They just got absolutely destroyed. And I think some of that might have been the conditions. They played every day, 10 hours a day for just 3 weeks in a row. Good luck. Good luck on day 16, showing up and just playing your A game. But I think we also have to acknowledge that, it played phenomenally. Like I broke down the way that it played. The only thing that was kind of weird to me about the way that bot played, generally speaking on the river, if we face a bet, we think about all the good hands we want to raise, what we have to call, and then maybe a few bluffs, right? But the way that it worked was like it would raise its good hands, and then hands where we would be like, oh, just call. It would sometimes raise, and it would be almost ambiguous as to whether it was a value bet or not. Like maybe it has like top pair, top kicker, and it calls 2 streets, then raises a river. And it's like, well, you're only really ever getting called by these better hands. That was the only thing that I saw where I was like, this doesn't really make sense to me. But overall, bots are getting really strong. They're getting a lot better, and they can definitely beat people in many formats. Does that worry you about the future of where poker's going?
Well, it would, I guess, if we were in a situation where in live action, we routinely had to worry about people sitting down with some kind of technology embedded into their head, which I can't imagine in some cases we could possibly be too far away from. But like I've never really been a heavy online player. And, honestly, one of the reasons is because I think right off the bat, when I started to play online, I realized if there's something set up where 2 people, 3 people can gather together and get an edge and cheat, they're usually going to do so. So I kind of thought, well, maybe this is something that I'm not going to ever really invest a lot of money in. And I never did. I enjoy playing multi-table tournaments and stuff like that, but never really got into it a lot. As far as live action goes, I don't know. I mean, it gets down to just like, you know, I think you and Dan also, again, talking about the different games as far as like this, the short deck or cut deck or whatever that was called, No Limit Texas Hold'em. That sounds like a lot of fun. And when we play the mixed games, for example, we're constantly adapting, changing. I mean, you go to like Bobby's room now or to Aria to sit down and play mixed game formats. You're playing, if you're playing 12, 13 games, you might be playing 6 or 7 games that for the most part have only existed for 5 or 6 years. I mean, when did Badusi and Badesi first start becoming something you'd see on a regular basis?
I mean, I don't even see them on a regular basis now, so I have no idea.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, and I think that's one of the reasons why, especially in Badesi and Badusi's case, they kind of like took off really fast in popularity in our mixed game format because we all realized right off the bat nobody had any kind of particular edge in it. It's like, so anytime we find those games where other people don't have a particular edge, we try to incorporate those. I mean, like, I don't know if you've played Archie, for example. Have you even heard of that game?
I've never heard of it. Archie?
Archie, yeah, it's called Archie. It's a 5-card triple draw high-low, where you got to have 8 or better on the low side to get half the pot. And you have to have a pair of 6s or better on the high side to get half the pot. So
wow.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's a fun game because we throw it into the mix. I think it's only been in the mix for not even a year yet, and nobody's a master of it. I mean, when we were first throwing it in, you know, nobody had ever played it more than 1 time or 2 times or 3 times. And that's, you know, so that's one of the ways I think in the long run for poker, we can always combat that kind of stuff, because who's ever going to write a program to try to master beating Archie? But then again, when you think about the world at large, where will AI be in 10 or 15 years, where you might just be able to input a problem into a system and say, computer, I need you to devise a program that will allow me to beat Archie. And you might be able to just set a computer to doing that, and it has an answer in 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, who knows where we're heading with that kind of stuff.
It really is scary, particularly for online poker. I think that the live arena is, I mean, you know, I'm going to say always is going to be pretty good, even though there is technology that's going the direction where, like, you know, there are Snapchat glasses where, like, they're somehow, you know, they can video record or whatever. And I'm sure that we're gonna have a whole new slew of people trying to cheat in various ways that need to be protected. But I still think that as long as people are going to go to the casino and sit down and play, I feel like there's always going to be a lot of money to be made, at least in some of these forms of poker. So you talk about mixed games. What would you say are what's your favorite game? What game are you best at? What games do you stay away from? Are you kind of like, are you willing to play anything just to learn and see if you like it? What are your favorite games?
Yeah, I mean, as far as what I prefer, I prefer to play stud 8 or better and stud high, Raz, those kind of games, the traditional old-fashioned stud games. As far as what I will play, I'm the guy that'll sit at the table, play any handed, any games for reasonably any stakes. You know, I was always willing to start the game heads up against whoever, playing whatever games they wanted to play. You know, and then as we add new games to the mix, I'm always one that's like, all right, throw it at me. I mean, I was just playing. Now, of course, this was only 25.50. Of course, 25.50 can be a big stakes for some people, but when we were in Oklahoma the other night, they put 2 or 3 games into the mix I had literally never even played. And I'm like, okay, how do we play the game? Describe it to me. What are the rules? And I'm trying to remember what was that one game was. I mean, just a couple of the games I've never, I mean, we're playing a PLO. Yeah, you're playing a PLO version of a game that you fold 1 card after, I don't even know. And then you're also playing a 5-card deuce to 7 low ball with a PLO hand on the board. I'd never played either of these variants before, but I'm always willing to try to learn, right? Because I want to be the guy that knows how to play all the new games.
What does a PLO hand on the board mean?
Well, you got 5 cards, and after the flop, you are allowed to discard as many as you want, just as though you're playing deuce to 7 no limit with the 5 hole cards you're holding, and then you get a turn and a river, and you're playing an Omaha high hand on the board. So you're playing a 2-way pot. Half your hand is no limit deuce to 7. We might be getting pretty far into the weeds for some of the people following. I don't really know, but so that was really, I mean, literally, you're playing a deuce to 7 no limit hand, you know, with your 5 hole cards, and then you got to somehow put together an Omaha high hand with the board.
Honestly, I would be so unbelievably bad at that game.
Well, I mean, I can't say I did bad. I probably actually was a winner in that game, but like I said, we weren't really playing for high stakes, and I ended up folding 90% of them because I really didn't understand. I was kind of watching what was going on. But once I realized that it was more important to make sure I had a valid, like jack or better kind of deuce to 7 hand here, as long as I flop some kind of straight or flush draw with the board, you just kind of would go with it if you wanted to.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think it's a good general idea for people when they play games that they're not familiar with to just kind of play tight out of the gate and try to learn?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you're going to, you can pick up and learn so much about the new game that you're trying to get a handle on just by watching the other people. You just got to kind of sit back and realize, okay, I'm going to be folding my small and big blind every lap, especially when you're playing in those mixed limit games. It's not anteing anything generally. So you just kind of hang back and figure that small and big blind every lap is just an investment in figuring out what's going on. And, whether it's any of these weird ones I'm talking about, or even when you're talking about playing stuff, like basic deuce to 7 triple draw or Badoogie or those kind of things, you kind of, as long as you're paying attention to what's going on, you're going to start to realize pretty quick what a good starting hand is, especially if you're just instinctively decent at playing cards.
That makes sense to me. That does make some sense. Let's change gears here. Let's talk about, I mean, this has to be what you're most well known for in the poker world. I can't imagine anything else comes very close. Let's talk about your 2010 Player of the Year run. Congrats, by the way. It's always amazing to win Player of the Year.
Right, yeah. It is always amazing to win Player of the Year. I mean, who's ever done it more than one time? Daniel, I think, right? Negranu's his name?
I've heard of it. I think I've heard of it before. Yes,
yeah, he got to do it twice. But my tournament experience up till 2010 was always very streaky. Even now, I think when you're essentially a recreational player, you're going to just when you enter a tournament series, if you're going to play 6 weeks at the World Series, you're either going to run hot or cold. You're going to have your eye on the ball from the beginning, or you're not in some cases. And I always felt like leading up to winning Player of the Year, if I could ever actually just have like a good run from beginning to end, I'd have a shot at it. And I really wanted to be able to win Player of the Year. So actually doing it was kind of amazing. As far as, other stuff since then, I've had some deep runs in, I played WSOP Asia Pacific and played the final table main event there, where we did a live broadcast all over the place. I think it was the middle of the night in the United States. But, so I do play a few other things every now and again. But, yeah, winning Player of the Year that year was the biggest thing. And that year in particular was funny because going into it, I didn't feel like I was going to be able to play a lot that summer because I had a lot of other things going on. We had just opened the first Scrubtastic in Las Vegas, and we were getting ready to open our second store in Dallas. And I was going to actually relocate to Dallas and for about 6 months or so. And so I only wired in $30,000. That was going to be all I was even going to probably play that year. And like right out the bat, or right out of the gate, I won. I came in 10th place in a limit hold'em event. And I think I got paid like $19,000 for that. And so as I was walking out toward getting paid, somebody told me that the last buy-in opportunity for the $10,000 stud 8 event or stud 8 or better event was going on. And I thought, or you're getting ready to close. And I thought, I wouldn't have normally budgeted for that, but here's 19 grand. What the hell? I'm going to play it. And then I won that event. And then like a week later, I won the Raz event. And then I came in 3rd place in the $25,000 buy-in 6-handed no limit event, which I had a really good shot at winning that one too. But, 3rd place, it was good enough. And then cash.
I'm sorry, man. You only won 2 bracelets in one summer.
Yeah, I know, right? People are like, yeah, you ran really bad there. But, Bucky did kind of suck out on me a little bit there. But, that's how poker goes. You can't complain about it. But still, we always do. It doesn't really matter what stakes it is or what the beat is. You always remember it and bitch about it a little bit.
Yeah, so what was it like winning your first bracelet? Did you have like a big stack the whole way through? Were there a bunch of points you thought you were out? What was the final table like? Can you walk us through that experience?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I think we started that day with like 20 people left, and we ended up Did we play it all I know is I remember finishing up the event at like 6 a.m. It was light outside when we got done. They've kind of changed the schedules around so that nobody ever has to play more than 12 hours. But at the time we got done with that, we'd been playing for a long time. And the final table was me, Alan Kessler, Jennifer Harmon, John Juwanda.
Wow. Stacks.
Who else? Yeah. What's that one Russian guy's name? I forget. But anyway, I mean, if you go back and look at it, I mean, it's a pretty stacked final table. So to end up coming out on top there, especially for your first bracelet, was just kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe I was able to fade that final table. And I won a big hand early on when we were at the final table against John Juwanda. I think he had aces up and I had trip kings or something like that. And, from there on out, it was relatively smooth sailing. Now, my Raz bracelet that summer was kind of up and down the whole way until we got down to about heads up. And then my third bracelet this summer in No Limit Deuce against Bernard Lee, we played heads up. I don't even remember how it went on and on. We played for like 4 or 5 hours heads up, and I had the chip lead for about a minute and a half once a few hours in, and then just ended up going on a run there at the end to beat him.
Yeah, someone actually asked about that heads up match specifically, and I saw that you won a bracelet, but I didn't see how it went down. So it was an extremely long match, or what was notable about that heads up match?
Bernard has a big following of people in the world of poker who are, basically his friend. And same thing for me. I think he and I have both been around long enough to where in the world of poker, we have a lot of friends. Whether we're necessarily known by the public at large is kind of, beside the point. So we both had a lot of people rooting for both of us. And it was just, being in a position where I felt like, even though I was at a disadvantage chip-wise, I felt like in the long run, as long as I hung in there and didn't get myself in too bad a spot, that I'd be able to win. And I think you know this as well as anybody. When you're heads up for a bracelet, where you're putting yourself mentally as far as, I've got this, it's right where I want it to be, I'm going to take this thing down. I mean, that's 90%, that's 98% of the battle when you're playing heads up. So
it is tough when you get to heads up, in really anything, in any event, but especially when you're playing for a World Series bracelet. And you think about how different it is to win versus to get second. It's a big difference financially. It's a big difference in terms of kind of the legacy that you leave behind. It's huge. And so, you don't really want to think about it because you're like, oh man, it would suck to get second. And I got second in an event, I think like 2 years ago, which, I walked away like, man, like that can happen. Sometimes you don't win, sometimes you get the second place, but the difference there is just so key. It's what really makes people remembered, the difference between first and second. In fact, the guy that I beat for my first bracelet, I think it was his like second place or something like that, third or fourth second place. That just has to be brutal.
Yeah. I can't even imagine. I mean, I think I'm really lucky in that I've only been heads up for a bracelet 3 times, and I've got 3 bracelets. So I've never had that disappointing walk to the cage. And it is kind of the funny thing about the way poker tournaments are structured. Everybody walking to the cage at the end of a poker tournament, there's only one happy person, no matter how many people entered. And I'll have people, especially people I work with who, they work hard all year long, and they see something that I might get for like a 3rd or a 4th or 5th or 20th place finish. And they'll be like, that's an insane amount of money. And you're like, yeah, the money's good. It's nice to win the money whenever you get it. But the bottom line is when you're playing in these tournaments, you're playing to win. And that's what you want to do.
Yeah, that's totally true. That's also kind of an attitude that I try to have throughout tournaments. I tend to have a disproportionate amount of early exits and late runs because I'm like, and I get that there are a lot of guys out there that are really into the ICM value of chips and all of that kind of good stuff. But I really feel that when you play a tournament, you should be trying to play for the win. You should be trying to play for as much money. The best possible spot is first place. So yeah. I think it's a good attitude to have that, that's what you're here for. The money is great, but I'm playing for the win. And I think that translates to more money as well.
Yeah, I think, I would imagine once you get done beating Phil and I get done beating Daniel, that's going to be nice for us to be able to play heads up, because I got a feeling that our play styles are really similar as far as the aggression level. And, I'm the same way. I mean, when you look at my World Series track record, I think I've got, I don't even remember what it is, something like 30 cashes overall, but 11 or 12 final tables. I just don't min cash anything. I'm playing balls to the wall. I was the bubble in 2 tournaments this summer. I mean, it just doesn't matter to me whether or not I'm going to min cash something. I'm playing to win the tournament, and I'm just going to push it the whole way always. And I don't have something that's not 5th gear. I'm always in overdrive when it comes to that from a competitive level. And I just don't even understand how people can play the mid.
Uh-oh. I believe our internet cut out. So while Frank rejoins us, we're going to take a few shots here in the chat. Who we got in the mix here, guys? Thank you everyone for tuning in today, by the way, to see Frank Kassela. We'll be back talking more about the World Series of Poker in a moment. Meanwhile, shout out to Mao Jr. How's it going, buddy? Steven Madera as well. Sensi, always good to have you by. Martin Lund. Is it Lund or Lund? Shout me out. You got it, man.
Where'd you go?
All right, we're back.
Oh, no problem. Finish your shout out.
Oh, yeah. So, no, we were just doing some shout outs. We're like, keeping it lively.
I don't know. Where did I get cut off there? I was just rambling.
We were talking about always being in 5th gear, always playing for the win. You bubbled 2 tournaments just this summer. Stone bubble or just kind of bubble?
I was the stone bubble in 1, and I was like 3 from the bubble in 1. And I know last summer I was a stone bubble in a 5K no limit event. I don't know. I've got to have, those last 10 spots before the bubble. I have to have more bust outs than anybody in poker history, because I just don't have the mentality of just making the money, barely getting there. But that's just the way I am.
I can assure you that I have a couple of my own. I did a bunch of vlogs this summer of my events. I think I just can't play all the events. You talked about how you won, you got that cash, then you won one, then you were going for it, and then you were playing all the event. I won an event this summer as well, right at the start. And then was like, oh, Doug, you're going to go for player of the year, man? I was like, no, because there's just too many people trying. It's so hard to actually have everything aligned and then take it down. So I didn't even really. What? You think I should have gone for it?
Yeah, I mean, really, you started off winning the 1 drop. I just feel like when you're in that position, I don't even know how many player of the year points you got for that. But if I was in your position there, that's the way I go. I mean, like this summer, as soon as I won a bracelet, Sean Deeb was sweating me at that point, and he and I went and late regged the Player's Choice 10K. It just doesn't matter to me when the World Series comes by. Maybe that's only because I only get to play those 6 weeks a year, but man, I'm going to line up and play that next event, and my schedule is just insane those 6 weeks every year. I play everything I can.
Yeah, I guess it's just a different mentality or a different approach towards it. It's funny that you mentioned how many points I got for the 1 drop. I really didn't get that many. I want to say 2 weeks after it, I wasn't even in the top 100.
What?
It didn't count for much.
I didn't. What's funny is I had a couple of people over the course of the summer ask me how many points I had, and I honestly had no clue. They've made that formula a little bit too complex, I think, for most of us to keep up with. But I do think that it's like the results versus the amount of money you invested, and I guess that's why the 1 drop, since you're invested, was it $1 million or 100K this year buy-in?
It was 100K, and it was like 3.7 or 8 for first.
Yeah, so you're only at 37 to 1 on your money there, so that's why you're only going to get X number of points, whereas the person that wins the, whatever it is, the Millionaire Maker or the Gargantuan or whatever that other tournament's called, they're gonna have an insane amount of points. They've got to be able to fix the long run. I only played the 1 drop 1 year, and I think you spent some time talking to Phil the other day about like tanking, and the year I played it, I think they did $1 million year 1, and year 2 they did the 100K, and I played that year, and I literally had a hand where somebody tank folded for 7 minutes, and I was just like, and I was berating the guy. I don't even know if you were at the table, but you said something about there was a business guy that was involved in it, and I was thinking, I wonder if that was the hand I was involved in, because I did berate the guy at the end of the hand. What's weird about it is he actually open tank folded a set. And I was on a stone cold bluff. So he had the right idea to think about it before he ended up folding it. I don't know why he folded it. It was an insane fold, but that's a whole nother story. But after that, I just thought there's just no way I'm going to play this tournament again. It's not even remotely enjoyable.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's actually another topic that I had here from some of the questions that people gave. What, coming in from more of the recreational side as a business guy, what are some of the things that really annoy you about poker? And what can we do to try and solve them?
Well, that's an easy number one is the tanking. And, the one suggestion that I've made to Jack Effel and Matt Savage both repeatedly, and they always either call me an idiot or tell me no way, is that if you take longer than 10 seconds to fold, your hand should just be exposed. Now, if it's a legitimate tank where you need 10 seconds to make the decision, you're not going to care whether or not the hand's exposed. But when you're sitting there and you floated with garbage, trying to think that you're going to pick up a bluff on the river, and all you've got is Jack Deuce offsuit, then your fucking hand gets turned over at the end if you take longer than 10. And honestly, that's the thing that's the most frustrating to me. And everybody in poker, when I make that suggestion, thinks it sounds crazy. But whatever. I like
it.
Well, that's the thing. I don't like the idea of a shot clock because I do think it encourages too many people to take longer to act than they normally would.
Yes.
And being a player from more the cash game world than the tournament world, when you're sitting there playing a rake, whether it's a time rake or even by hand rake, I play mostly time rake. So the thing is, you just want to get in as many hands as you can every 30 minutes, and nobody wastes time. Nobody needs that. And when they do, when somebody does take 30 seconds to make a decision, you never give them shit about it because it's a legitimate thing that they're thinking about because they're paying the same amount of money that you are.
So basically, anytime it's on the river and the other person has made a decision that's on you, if you get like 10, 15 seconds, if you have not acted, you have to show your cards?
Well, what I'm saying is the hand should be exposed if anybody requests it. I don't think the hand necessarily needs to be rolled over anytime because I think it would be one of those things where within the etiquette of poker, most of us wouldn't ask that player to turn the cards over if we thought they were legit. But if it was one of those players and the type, you've been at the table with them that are going to take 30, 45, 60 seconds every single river where somebody bets into them to decide whether or not to muck their hand. After they do that a couple of times, you're going to figure it out early in a tournament. Okay, let's see his cards. Okay, let's see his cards. Okay, let's see his cards. We just have to put something like that in place to put a stop to it.
That's a smart one too because it doesn't affect the pre-flop and flop decisions. I completely agree that when you say, okay, shot clock's 30 seconds, even though this is not what should be taken away from that, what is taken away is I get 30 seconds. So I'm going to use all 30 of my seconds. And then you take 30 every time. People don't realize the shot clock, yeah, it limits to 30 seconds. But if there are multiple people in a hand and you play multiple streets, it's like 30 times 3 on the flop, times 3 on the turn, times 2 on the river, and then pre-flop, and then it can actually end up still taking a very long time, even with the shot clock added.
Well, I played one shot clock tournament, and I think that was the most torturous one of all because I know that there were people that I've played with before that were sitting there taking more time to make decisions over and over again than they normally would because they had the clock. So I thought this is obviously not a solution. And I don't know. When you think about different things, I guess second, moving on from the tanking thing as far as making poker miserable, the other thing that I find that's like really infuriating when talking about trying to grow the game is watching professional players berate new people to the game. That is just, it's horrible for the game. It doesn't make sense for anybody. We're all caught in frustrating situations and we may say something we regret after the fact, but there are some people who just constantly berate and make fun of people for no reason. And, when it comes to making poker just something more comfortable, when you imagine how many people walk into a casino, since we both live in Vegas, this is the perfect place to talk about it. How many people we have coming to Las Vegas who are comfortable walking up to a Game of Thrones video slot machine or whatever the hell you'd even call that because they don't have to worry about anybody laughing at them, making fun of them, not looking stupid or whatever. How cool would it be if we'd figure out a way to take those people, bring them over to the poker tournament buy-in desk, let them buy into an event, sit down, and in a friendly way, teach them about how much fun it is to sit down and play poker and how much better a game it is, better value from a gambling point of view, and the whole 9 yards. The casinos are never going to invest money in that kind of stuff. So as a player community, if we want to grow the game, it's kind of something on all of us. I always try to reach out just to people I know, friends and family. If I hear somebody just even wants to go play 1-3 no limit, I'll say, all right, cool. Call me any day you want. I'll give them my phone number. I'll take them down and let them play, because I think it's on all of us if we want to grow the game to bring people into it.
That's a great attitude to have. And I can say that when I started playing poker, I did not view it the same way. You know, it was like 10 years ago now. I was 18 years old or whatever. And I definitely, on more than one occasion coming up, you know, made fun of some people that, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I shouldn't have, you know, kind of, I wouldn't say picked on people, made fun of, you know, new players for doing something really stupid. You know, or like the classic example in poker is, as a recreational player at the table, a big hand goes down between them and a reg. The hands get shown, and they just have like the super WTF hand. You know, like what was that guy even thinking? And by the way, we have a hand of yours that I want to bring up.
Awesome, I want to see it.
Well, we will in a second here. So, you know, and then the player just shows it down, and then there are like people at the table like, oh, like, you know, making like comments or saying whatever as they walk away from the table, and then laughing at them or whatever. And it's just like, this is not what you want. This is not like the atmosphere that you want to create. You want to create something where people are happy to be there and it's an enjoyable experience. And if someone just punts out their money, like, you know, whatever, it's poker, like gambling, like, sure, whatever, these things are going to happen. If we really make fun of the people that are the new lifeblood to the game, which, by the way, we're getting less and less of that. I think that poker, not by a large margin, but it is shrinking to some degree in a lot of areas. And part of the problem is totally that. It's like if we make fun of these players that are trying their best, look, poker's a hard game. You know, there are people that have played poker for years that, you know, are going through tough times or can't make it work or make mistakes or tilt or whatever. Trying to make fun of the players that are new and coming into the game, that's just disrespectful.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it would be great if we could all, you know, the people who love to play poker could just all decide on a regular basis to reach out to those people who, I mean, I don't know how often you've done it, but I regularly will go and play a 1-3 game just because somebody I've met on an airplane or somebody who's a relative of somebody I know where they just want to go. And I will, just literally tell them, no problem. Let me know. I'll meet you at Bellagio, meet you at Wynn, meet you at Hard Rock, wherever, and just sit down and play with them. I'll help them with the process of, you know, getting into the table, sit down with them at the table if we can get 2 seats together. And I just think it's important for the game. If we're all bringing in 10 or 15 people a year, we can keep the game growing, especially as far as live cash game. Because, I mean, how often do people sit down and play poker and think that it sucked? It's fun. It's just it's a social game. It's enjoyable to sit there and drink a beer and play cards. I mean, for crying out loud, it's playing cards. We've been doing it for how long now as a species? We just enjoy doing it.
Right. And then when you're next to them, you can bluff them relentlessly and they always fold because they believe you. Like, this guy's so nice. He took me to the casino. There's no way. Little does he know.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, hopefully you don't do that too often. I mean, just enough. I mean, you want them to have a little bit of a good time. But, yeah, you always want to have that edge on those folks. I want to see this hand you're talking about, though. You can't tease like that and then let it go.
All right, let's bring it up. So there was one hand from a no-limit hold'em tournament, and I tried to do a little research on some hands that you played.
Okay.
You can't find very many no-limit ones because you've not played too many notable no-limit hands. But I do have a hand here where it was your very first hand of a tournament, and you had ace-9 suited. You 3-bet somebody, called a huge 4-bet. They jammed on 6-3-2 rainbow, and you just called it off with ace-9 against.
When was this?
Against Blonde, against Jean-Robert Blonde.
Oh. That happened this summer, I think.
It was in this summer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's really taken out of context, just in the sense that JRB and I have, I don't even know how many hundreds, really thousands of hours of playtime together. And that was six-handed. It was a six-handed tournament. I think at the time I sat down, we were like four-handed. And I don't even remember. I don't remember if I called it off or if I shoved on him. I think I shoved, but I can't imagine I called it. Sometimes they get that off, but even if I did, it wouldn't be completely ridiculous just knowing the hands that he and I have played together. I mean, I remember he and I were playing in the No Limit Deuce. I think it was the No Limit Deuce 10K a few years ago, and I ended up calling a big bet of his on the end with a pair of sevens, and I was right. I mean, it's just the way. I mean, he and I have just – I mean, I'm sure you've got players like that where you just got a lot of play time with them. And I don't even know if it's a specific tell per se, but you get reads on people and you understand their rhythms and the patterns that they might be, trying to, expose different weaknesses in your game. And you think, I'm going to play back at them here. And you end up finding yourself out in the middle of deep water. We've all done dumb shit. That way that happens.
Well, that hand, you were on the right track because you said to him, quote, "You can do that with anything. This is my first hand." And called. And he showed you 5-3 on 6-3 deuce in a 4-bet pot.
There you go. Exactly. So, yeah, I wasn't even too far off there. But apparently I didn't end up getting there. I had 2 overs, so I wasn't even in that bad of shape.
You were not in that bad of shape, although still in bad shape. And you did bust the tournament on your first hand.
Oh, I mean, how many of us haven't done that before?
I've actually, you know what? I've only ever busted one tournament on my actually first hand that I can remember. And it was a high roller at Seminole Hard Rock. I'm actually going to play that same high roller next week. But it was my very first hand at the table. I sat down, I got dealt pocket tens, and we were deep. We were like very, very deep. I 3-bet somebody, got cold called, 8 high flop, 10 on the turn, and then they just rivered a straight, and I got stacked in the first hand. I don't think that happens very much. First hand?
Well, I mean, I know I've done it.
You got 2 cards in the whole tournament.
Well, I mean, there's one other tournament I know where I ended up all in on the very first hand with ace king or ace queen, and it ended up being a 4-way all in, very first hand of a tournament. This is when tournaments started on time. This was in Tunica like in the year 2001 or 2002. So we were probably actually 10-handed, and 4 people ended up all in. So 3 of us, got ready, went down all the way out, got bought in, sat down. 3 of us played one hand and we're back in the room. So, I mean, that kind of shit does happen from time to time. But to say the very actual first hand dealt out, yeah, that probably is pretty rare. But if that was the first hand that I played that day, I'm sure the way they reported it's right. So maybe it was, but whatever, it happens.
So yeah, I mean, like the thing about tournaments, let's talk about the late regging thing, because that is all the rage these days. I used to be a show up on time guy. Now I'm a when's the last minute kind of guy. What's your approach with tournaments? Do you like to be there early? Do you like to show up later? Do you think it matters? What are your thoughts?
Well, when it comes to like this summer in particular, I was trying to play more no limit hold'em than usual. And when it comes to no limit hold'em, I hate to get there before the antes start for sure. And the way the World Series works, I flat out won't get there till the 5th hour. I think anybody getting there before the 5th hour, the way they've got set it up, is just kind of wasting their time. But that's just my opinion. The funny thing for me, 2 of the 3 bracelets I have, I basically bought into the tournament at the last possible moment. So, for me, I definitely favor as late buy-in as possible. I mean, how many really good things happened to you in the first couple hours of any tournament that you can remember that ended up making any damn difference, especially when you think about the fact that you might be sitting 300 deep when you start a tournament to by the time you get anywhere deep in the tournament, you might on average be 40 or 50 deep. I mean, it doesn't even hardly matter what's going on in those early levels. So, in the long run, I don't know whether or not that's comfortable for people at large when it comes to showing up and playing World Series events. But unless they change that structure, I think it's going to be more and more late regging as time goes on.
What do you think about maybe earlier on in tournaments making the blinds higher relative to the stacks and then moving up slower? Do you think maybe that's a good idea?
Well, personally, yeah, I do. I think anything that gets the tournaments over faster is better for everybody in general. I think the people who put a lot of time and heartache into bitching about tournament structure over the years kind of did us all a disservice, because I mean, for one, imagine being the casino where you're trying to run these tournaments, you're trying to staff a gajillion dealers to handle a 4,000 player field or whatever. At the end of the day, no matter what else you put together into poker, it is in itself gambling, and it's a game. And as long as we're all playing by the same rules, yeah, I mean, some people maybe are favored if you're sitting 300 big blinds deep for 4 hours. But in the long run, that's just torture for everybody. You know, let's just set the structure up where the tournaments are faster. Like the way they did it this summer, I think was way better, where for the most part you were in the money, definitely in the money no later than dinner at the end of, or dinner on day 2. But we had tournaments like last year, I guess, was the worst year, where, I mean, there were tournaments where you're bagging up at the end of day 2 and you're still not even in the money. And that's just torture. Who wants to do that? That's just, I don't even understand why people are arguing about that kind of stuff. I mean, quicker structure is better for everybody.
What do you think about maybe with an event like the main event, though? Do you like the, because I mean, look, the World Series Poker main event, it is slow as can be, but in terms of value, that is by far the highest value tournament that you can possibly play. Do you like the structure with that?
Yeah, I think the main event structure, the way, especially like the way they had it this year, even when all the way to watching the final table itself play out, I think is perfect as the soup can be. They shouldn't mess with it at all. But that's the main event. That's one event each year that means everything to the world of poker. Let that be a really slow, long, gradual structure that culminates in people actually still having the ability to play poker 9-handed at the final table. But as far as all the rest of the tournaments we played throughout the year, I mean, like my favorite tournament I played this summer was the $5,000 30-minute level no limit event. You know, I don't remember where I ended up finishing in that one. I know I made the money, but I mean, it was just so much fun. I mean, the levels were going up every 30 minutes and we just had a good time. We were drinking beer and just having fun. And I mean, that's, I don't know, it's just what I like out of poker more than anything else, is having a good time.
Yeah, having a good time is really important. Do you drink often when you play?
No. Actually, I went through a period, you know, I lost a lot of weight over the last couple of years. I changed my diet, my lifestyle. And so I was taking medicine for high cholesterol and blood pressure that I was able to get away from. So for about 15 years, I wasn't drinking at all. And this year was the first World Series in probably really ever, now that I think about it, where I ever even had a beer or a glass of wine. And it was just kind of fun this summer, cutting loose and doing that a few times.
Did you say you went 15 years without drinking?
Yes. Yeah. 15 years without drinking, from 2002 to basically the beginning of this year. I probably had the equivalent of 12 bottles of wine over that 15-year period.
That is very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess, I don't know. Do you like to drink more than that?
I mean, here's the thing. Yes. I guess like, yeah. I'm pretty lucky in that my body, it deals with alcohol extremely well. I've never had a hangover before, and my family is half British, so there's a lot of drinking going on as it is. So I don't know if it's just culturally or just, you know, I don't know, but yeah, I do a decent amount of drinking, I would say.
Well, this summer, you know, speaking of like our time at XS together that night, that was the first time where I'd ever just had shots. So Sean D made sure I had more than my fair share that night, which is probably why I ended up being there all night long. But anyway, you know, so that just, I never, you know, I had my first kid when I was 19 years old. And then I had 2 kids before I could even legally drink. And I've got 5 kids altogether now. And, you know, when you have young kids at home and you're focused on working as many jobs as you need to work to be able to pay the bills, you just don't, I don't know. I never really got into a partying lifestyle, never really got into drinking a whole lot. So I'm kind of having a good time with it now.
Nice. How old were you when you had your first kid?
19.
So young.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a 29-year-old.
Older than me.
I know, right? Yeah. He was, well, he was born in January of 88. You were born in 88 also, right?
Yeah. I was born December 88.
Yeah. So yeah, you're not 29 yet. So I've got, 29-year-old, 28-year-old, he'll be 25 in 2 days. And then my daughter's about to be 21. And then my youngest is 10.
Do you feel you were ready to have a kid at that age?
No, but I mean, I don't think anybody's ever ready to have kids, right? I mean, if any of us waited until we were ready, I don't think anybody would have kids. But I don't know. They've been, my kids are the center of my world. So I'm glad I had them. I'd love to have more. I just love kids. They're cool.
Yeah, so I mean, 5 kids, that's a ton. That's like a really large family. Did you, when you were growing up, did you always want to have a large family, or are you from a large family?
No, I'm not from a large family. It was really me and my brother for the most part growing up. We were raised by a single mom. And I actually, like, going through high school and like setting myself up career minded wise, didn't think I was even going to have kids till I was in my 30s. So considering, thinking that was my goal, that was what I was focused on through my teenage years, and then ended up having 4 kids in my 20s, kind of weird. But after I had my first kid, I realized how cool kids were. And I don't know, do you have kids?
No, I do not have kids.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't know. Yeah, exactly. That's how well you and I know each other.
Sorry. I do have kids. I have the good kids here on YouTube. All the kids stopping by. Appreciate it, guys. Shout out to everybody. No kids.
Well, once you start to have kids, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It's kind of like a defining thing about life, having kids. And it's just really cool. It's indescribable. You can't explain it to people that don't have them. But once you start having kids, they're just really cool.
I guess like one thing that I think about a lot as far as having kids goes is just I spend so much of my time, working on things and traveling and especially with the poker lifestyle. It's not as much like this for me now as it was, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago. But sometimes I'd go through stretches where I would lose a lot of money over 6 months or a year. And my net worth, my situation would change drastically. And I never really felt like that's something that I wanted to have kids through. I know you make it work, but just that volatility is my decision as a human being to go through. And I don't want to put that pain on other people without having chose that same life,
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine being in a position where I was trying to depend income-wise on poker to pay my bills, pay my mortgage, feed my kids and stuff like that. So the decision-making process for that is much tougher. And then on top of that, like, I know for me in 2005, 2006, I had a couple years where I was playing a lot. And then in 2007, when my 10-year-old was born, I was kind of back off the trail again and back to being at home raising a kid. I mean, it's hard. I mean, you can't really be a good parent and be following the tournament trail around the world. Now, there might be some of my friends that I'm offending even saying that maybe are doing that, and they might be wonderful parents. But I think the most important thing to being a good parent is presence and spending time with them and enjoying them as human beings. So I can't imagine that you can really do those two things together very well.
I'm going to double down on your statement. I'm going to say you can't even be a good person.
Well, I would certainly never say that. I mean,
I don't understand how a lot of these guys do it, where they just go from stop to stop to stop to stop to stop. You lose the day of travel to get there. You lose the day out. You're always playing tournaments. Tournaments take a long time. And then on top of all of those things, you also mainly lose. Tournaments aren't cash games. No. Tournaments, you mainly lose. You mainly walk away having deposited your buy-in for some lucky asshole to win. I hate those guys. They're so lucky, or whatever. And then you have to do that nonstop. And then when you factor in travel, you factor in, I just don't think that lifestyle was something that I could do.
No, and I don't. I mean, I have a lot of friends that do it, and I can't say that I'm envious of them. I'm envious of their whatever you call it, their footloose fancy freeness of being able to be in Spain one day and Italy the next, and back over to Monte Carlo, and then over to England, and then over here to the U. I mean, that's cool. I can imagine being able to do it, but I can't imagine being in that situation. And then on top of that, unless you're being sponsored by Poker Stars or any of those kind of people, I don't really know, how you can fade, the rake of the tournaments themselves, the travel expenses that go along with it, and then feeding yourself and all the other things. I mean, because when we're on the road, we're getting massages and we're eating fine food and we're going, you don't want to go to Barcelona and not see anything. I mean, so to me, it's just hard to imagine that there's a lot of people that are doing that full kind of schedule and really making money at it.
I think a lot of it comes down for those guys to just how you run sort of out of the gate with tournaments. And then that really ends up defining, your interpretation on just that world. You know, for example, if you come into the tournament scene in your early 20s, your first year traveling it, you win 2 major events, you have a couple other good scores, and you're like, oh, I get to make $1 to $2 million a year traveling the world. This is amazing. And then you realize that is just never going to be sustainable. So I think a lot of it just comes down to the experiences that you have as an individual.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. I'm sure there's some people out there who have done it, but it'd be interesting to go back and look at the first couple of seasons of World Poker Tour at some of those people that were winning that $1 million+ prize at the end of it, and how many of them are still even around in poker anymore, because they probably did think, oh my God, this was an easy $1.2 million. And then they rolled through that entire bankroll in the next 2 or 3 seasons, chasing that around the world, and ran through all of it, I would guess. I mean, because Alex said I'm going by memory, but I don't really think that there's a ton of those people still around.
That happens constantly in the world of poker. In fact, yeah. I'm sure you would know about this, right? You've been in the world of poker for a while. I guess, like, when we're talking about turnover, we're talking about people coming and leaving. How many of the same people do you still see playing the day that you saw when you got into the game, 30 years ago, 25 years ago or so?
That's an interesting question. I mean, what's funny is it's like presence of mind sort of, keeps people who you're seeing on a regular basis right there. So usually when I go to play in Bobby's room and it's just a group of us playing 400, 800 mixed games, it always seems like those are people that have been around for a long time. But if I was to actually be able to scan through my memory banks and see all the people who are no longer there, I mean, I would imagine there's dozens and dozens of them littering that highway. And, especially over the course of 20+ years, or getting close to 20 years anyway. And I don't know. I mean, I can't even imagine. I think back on some of the first tournaments I played, and I would imagine that there's, out of a 250-person tournament field I maybe played in Tunica in the year 2000, there might still be a dozen people in the world of poker. And I mean, I know 10 of them probably really well.
Yeah, we always hear the Chris Moneymaker stories, where somebody satellited in against all odds, bankroll on the line, and they take it down. And you're like, oh man, what a feel-good story. But they don't tell you the story of Jim, who got a second mortgage on his home to buy in and busted, and his wife left him while he was at the tournament. You never hear Jim's story.
No, I mean, what's funny is you use that as an example, but I remember one time I was actually killing some time at the Mirage, and we were getting ready to play. It was called the Mirage Poker Showdown. It was a WPT event, and I was playing blackjack, and there was a guy at the table with me. We were both just sitting there playing blackjack, and he told me he had second mortgaged his home to go play WPT events because he and his wife had decided he was good enough at poker to do that. And I just remember thinking, oh shit, that can't be a good idea. But what am I going to say at this point? I mean, there's nothing I can say where I don't come off as an asshole. So I just kind of smiled and nodded. And, good luck, Jim. I'm sure that was his name, probably. Jim, you probably met the same guy.
Classic Jim. Classic Jim.
Exactly. What's funny is, thinking back on watching Phil's podcast earlier, and, he was talking about that miraculous tournament finish where he ended up winning and going jogging in the middle of the night. And, he was literally in for his last couple $100 in playing that tournament. He had saved $200 to be able to fly home. For Phil, Phil would have been Phil no matter what, I think. I think he would have showed up and figured out a way to get back in the game. And Phil's just a really good poker player, and that's what he wanted to do. And I think he was going to find a way to do it. But the world definitely is littered with Jims who went out there and did that second mortgage and did whatever it took. And it's unfortunate for them, but for the rest of us, hey, it worked out.
Yeah, and I want to clarify something because we got some people in the chat that are angry here. We're not saying people shouldn't gamble. In fact, if anything, we've been saying the exact opposite thing pretty much the whole time. All I'm trying to say anyway is try to be somewhat responsible with it. If you have a big tournament score, stay, and it's tough for people to do this, but stay a little grounded. Realize that money is not going to last for forever. You're not the greatest gift to tournaments that ever happened. There's going to be someone else that wins that same tournament next year. So just try and stay a little more humble and grounded when you do win, and also gamble within your means. You don't have to just prove how cool you are to everyone. And that is something that when I started poker, I was always the guy taking aggressive shots. I wouldn't say that I took many stupid shots. I I can remember maybe 1 or 2 times where maybe I would classify it as stupid, but I was always aggressive with it because I wanted to make it to the top. I wanted it to be one of the high stakes players, and I also wanted to be more respected in the world. And then what I found was when you really put on the line like that, and then you lose, you need to move back down. You know, it feels like it hurts you, kind of like you're not the same player that you were before. So I think that responsible gambling and being responsible with your bankroll and moving up and understanding that those wins are a one-time thing is just an absolutely critical component of being, a good poker player.
Well, yeah, and I think it's kind of, I'm not seeing the feed here on my screen, so maybe I don't have the right thing clicked, but it's funny to imagine there's anybody in the feed right now that thinks there's anything you and I can say on this podcast that would deter anybody from playing poker. I mean, let's face it, the people watching your podcast are degens. If they can second mortgage the house and buy into a tournament, they're going to be there. It's not going to matter.
Bang. Frank showing up, taking shots at the audience. Damn, guys. How's that feel?
Well, I mean, seriously, is there really anything that you and I are going to say on this podcast that's going to keep people from gambling? I can't imagine so. I mean, but then again, it's like I've said over and over again, I love poker. I think it's a great game. It's a fun way to spend time. But at the end of the day, for most people out there, they just need to look at it as something that they are doing for fun. The people that figure out a way and are good enough to consistently make money at it, those are the world beaters. Those are the rest of the guys out there like you that we show up and try to beat and try to take down in tournaments like King of the Hill.
Well, it's funny. It's funny to me because, when people say good things about my game, and I take a lot of pride in my play, of course, but realistically, I think that they're mentioning like 2 or 3 tournaments that I've won. And that just always is funny to me because, okay, I've won 3 bracelets, right? And I've not played many events. And don't get me wrong, skill played a role. But I am just so unbelievably lucky to have won those. And I don't mean that in like the people say it, but they really think deep down that it's – I mean, I really am. Like those especially like the 1Ks, like one of those fields was like I won a $1,000 turbo. 1,500 people played a $1,000 turbo. I showed up like at late reg, had like X amount of blinds, jammed a bunch of times, and won the tournament, And like, I guess I just feel that sometimes when people look at the top people in tournaments, the quote world beaters or like just the top of the top, I think a lot of times they're not players that are nearly as good as they seem like they are just from like their results.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, when I say something like that, I'm talking about the top echelon of players who are multimillionaires from poker play itself. I mean, there may be 100, 200 people out there like that. And, you're one of those people. And then it's fun to show up and as a guy like me, a business guy, somebody who's got full-time life away from poker, to be able to show up and have the opportunity to compete with you guys. And then the opportunity to face you heads up to win a bracelet or stuff like that. It's just really lots of fun. And like you were saying when you were making your point, we're not saying not to gamble. By all means, get out there and gamble. But yeah, do it responsibly. Don't second the mortgage the house if you can prevent it, and take care of the responsibilities in life you have to.
So let's kind of wind this up here, and let's talk a little bit about just the future of poker, where you think things are headed. Online, I think we've seen decreased fields kind of in a lot of different things, increased rake, all of that kind of stuff. In the live realm, we've seen some tournaments grow. I mean, this was a great year for the main event. We had the 3rd biggest field ever. What do you think about the future of poker?
Well, I feel like next year's World Series of Poker will probably even have bigger fields than this year's did. I think on the live tournament scene, we have a growing market. And online, I would love for online to be legalized in the United States. For online poker, online gambling in general in the United States to be illegal is just complete nonsense anyway. And it would be great for the world of poker. I mean, especially the few years where we had the online tournaments feeding people through satellites we had a couple of years at the World Series where you were literally allowed to play satellites even into like the 1,500 buy-in events. And how cool would that be if WSOP.com was legal nationwide and they could start running satellites, all year long to get, I can't even imagine how big the fields would be at that point.
That would be huge.
Right. And that's the kind of thing where, I mean, if you were able to do like a multi-step tournament or whatever it is, a $1 buy-in, $10 buy-in or whatever, to end up in a $1,500 no limit event at the Rio at summertime, I mean, nobody's going to ever bother to write bot programs to beat that kind of stuff. And that's where in the long run, online poker has an opportunity to still be a viable part of the poker marketplace. But it's important that we get federal law change, because state by state is great, but in the long run, we really have to get the federal law change so that we can play a nationwide online market that can not only even be played here domestically, but also invite international players and get back to essentially what poker was online 10 years ago.
Yeah, and while I agree that would be amazing, but do you really see it going that direction? I mean, Sheldon Adelson's out there in the streets just battling. He doesn't want the kids, the good, innocent kids of this nation. Do you know how much underage gambling happens? If this goes through, 6-year-old kids are going to be gambling. Do you want that? Do you want 6-year-old?
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't want 6-year-old kids gambling, but you know, the thing is, I mean, I don't know. When it comes to social stuff like that, I'm very libertarian. I know people told you not to get me talking about politics, so I won't even go there. But, you know, I just think at the end of the day, people are going to do what people want to do. And if there's a 6-year-old out there that has a gambling problem, that kid's going to find somebody on the street corner to make prop bets with if they need to, but they're going to get their gamble on, that's for sure. But when it comes to, you know, I don't even know what to say about Sheldon Adelson. At the end of the day, I feel like, I mean, how much control do you have over that kind of stuff? I mean, what's the difference between playing online poker and day trading? Or, I mean, look at the people day trading crypto now. I mean, talk about gambling. I mean, people are online gambling now legally in the United States in all kinds of different other forums. It's just not in online poker per se.
Are you involved in the crypto world at all?
No, but I mean, I do have a lot of friends who are involved in it. What's funny is I was actually, speaking of gambling, I was playing bingo at Red Rock Casino. However many,
do.
Yeah, right. however many years ago this was, and a friend of mine was telling me about Bitcoin when it was like $7. And I was going to go and like throw 10 grand in it and, you know, just see what happened to it. I'm sure I would have sold it by the time it's 20. So I'm not that upset that I didn't go do it, but I actually did put some time into, you know, like researching it. And back then, even trying to get a hold of a Bitcoin was pretty complicated. I mean, you remember before the interview today, how hard it was for me to get my computer working. I was not a Bitcoin kind of guy from day one.
It was tough today.
But, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that there are some people out there making money, but anytime you're looking at one of those, you know, those winner and loser type of trading events, I mean, everybody can't be making money at it. You got to have a couple people who are really good that can expose an edge, that know where they're making their money, and then everybody else is losing. And I think that's what's happening in crypto.
Well, crypto is interesting right now because I just think that there's such a sense of people not wanting to miss out on the next Bitcoin or the next Ethereum or the next whatever. But just the underlying value of cryptocurrency, just the concept of digital money that can also be decentralized and also be, you know, just really a much safer currency where it's not gonna ever be like a bunch of Bitcoin get printed because, you know, some country's in debt or something. I think that makes sense. I think that countries, you know, quite often act against the interests of their own citizens when they print money, or a lot of the laws that or a lot of the things that they do. So I like the idea of digital money that is decentralized, you know, in that way. I don't know if long term that means Bitcoin. I think currently Bitcoin is the best thing that we have. I think Ethereum's technology is currently better than Bitcoin's, but you know, I also feel that Ethereum has made some questionable decisions in the past. But anyway, that stuff aside, I just do believe in cryptocurrency as a long-term, as something that has value. And that's one of the main reasons why I invest in it. Now, I have friends that are just legitimately all in on it. I have friends that are just all in, and they have had a phenomenal year. It has been a good year for all of the people that are all in on crypto. But I also don't want to put it in a spot where if it does crash, and there's probably going to be a crash at some point. There's been crashes before. Most markets have some downturn at some point. I don't want to be in a position where I've put so much money on the line that it's actually going to have a significant impact on my life.
Well, I might be too uneducated about the technology behind it to sound intelligent, but my biggest concern would be the US government, because the US government has the ability to flex its muscle like it did during Black Friday, like it did during the Silk Road shutdown, or whatever it is. For people out there that think that something like digital currency is going to happen whether the US government wants it to or not, I find that to be a little far-fetched. So in the long run, as the US government loses the ability to steal from the rest of the world by printing fiat currency, they're going to start to eventually get afraid, and they will implement something that allows there to be a digital currency that the Federal Reserve controls. So there may in the long run be a Federal Reserve digital type currency that maybe even has some of the blockchain stuff underlying it, but I do think that the federal government's going to be the one to do it.
So if you're saying it's going to fail because the federal government will interfere, that's pretty not libertarian of you there.
I'm just talking about reality, though. I just think that, when you understand like the economic stuff that underlies the U.S. government's ability to basically endlessly print money, they're not going to give that. They're not going to give that up easily.
Yeah, I think that is a huge potential issue. I have no idea what that would do if the U.S. government either made it illegal or they put down really harsh regulations on it or whatever. A lot of countries are embracing Bitcoin, and so from that aspect, it's been quite good. But yeah, you really don't know long run what that's going to look like. There are people that will say if Bitcoin becomes illegal, then it will drive the price up because the people will rot or whatever, nonsensical stuff there is. Or maybe there's some merit. I have no idea, but it's certainly an interesting space, and I'm interested to see like what happens in the future.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I love talking about it and stuff like that, and I would love to have the foresight to see where it's going to be in 10 or 20 years, but I would definitely be afraid of being all in. If you've got friends who are all in, I would certainly advise them to take a little bit off the table, like 10, 15%. How much could that really hurt? They need to get a little bit of it out just in case, because the funny thing about it is I don't even know how big the entire Bitcoin space is now. Let's just say it's $200 billion. That's still not enough money for the US government to care that much about. But if that eventually grows to where you're looking at $1 trillion or $2 and the US government has to address it, I just don't know what the US government's reaction would be. And that would be my concern.
The current market cap is roughly 120 billion. That's Bitcoin and all the other coins. Bitcoin is like around half of that. And the second biggest player is Ethereum. They're around like 20, 25 billion. So yeah, I mean, like still small potatoes when you're looking at very large industries, but growing nonetheless. Anyway, we got totally off track here, but yeah, let's go ahead and end the podcast. I want to say once again, thank you for joining us today. Any last words to the good people here on YouTube?
No, I mean, if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Kassela. I'll be out there tweeting a little bit as we get closer to New York. I mean, let's face it, the King of the Hill's not convenient for any of us to go attend. We're going there to see who the best is.
Oh, he just cut off. Bad time to cut off the stream. Oh, the closing remarks. Let's just give him a minute here to see if he rejoins. But yeah, not convenient for either of us. We both live in Las Vegas and we're flying to New York for this. So we could have had it right here. Helmut's here a lot too. Yeah. I don't think Jungle's not here though. Quack Van, I'm mortgaging my home to play the WSOP next year. Awesome, Quack. You really took away a lot of good sound fundamentals here from the podcast. Great podcast today. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Frank. We're going to wait one more minute here to see if Frank rejoins us. Give him a shot. If he texts me otherwise, then he says, guess we're done. All right, guys, that's going to do it here for us from the podcast. It was great to have Frank drop on by. We are going to be playing in a heads-up $50,000 tournament in New York on August 22nd. If we both win, we will face off in the finals. So, again, thank you all for joining us. That's going to be it for us here for podcast week. I'm going to give you a little what's up guys. Now I'm going to give you a little heads up on what the schedule is looking like moving forward. We're going to have a few poker hands episodes slated for maybe in a couple days. And then on Monday, so we have a couple hand analysis shows coming up. I do have a giveaway brewing. We got a giveaway brewing. I know you guys like your giveaways. So we got one coming up. And yeah, head to Florida tomorrow. We'll be in Orlando for a few days, then in Fort Lauderdale, playing in a 25K high roller, some high stakes cash games, and then the head to tournament in New York. So busy times here, guys. Want to say thank you once again for tuning in for pod. I hope you guys enjoyed the pods. I feel that I think most people here, if you're here, you probably watch most of the other ones. Let me know what you guys think. I have a poll going over on Twitter. Let me know what you guys like to see. Vote in that poll, or just give me your thoughts. You know, you can leave a comment below the video. I read them. I go through them and I read almost every comment. I can't always respond because it would get out of hand, but I like seeing what you guys have to say and take something away from it. Even if it's negative, I really do enjoy that feedback. You know, if you say, Doug, I hate you, I'm like, there's going to be a million Doug, I hate you in the comments now. But you know what I'm saying? If you can say, Doug, like, you know, this thing or that thing, and you give me some feedback, I really do appreciate that. I'm trying to improve the overall quality of my channel and of everything that I do. I'm always open to trying to learn and get better. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed podcast week. I had fun. We'll try and do another one of these at some point. You know, maybe doing a slower week in October or November or something. But for now, that's going to do it. And I'll see you guys soon for some poker hands.